Morning, everyone. I'm Sister Barbara Hahl. I'm the Senior Vice President for Mission here at Mount Carmel Health System, and I want to welcome you on behalf of the administration of our health system. And I'm glad the parents are here today as well, because what I'm going to do is give you the history. Usually I do this in an hour and a half, but by that time I'm going to be sound asleep, so I am cutting it down to half an hour, and I've got people in the back who are going to do this when I get to half an hour. This is the seal of the Sisters of the Holy Cross, and you will see this around the hospitals periodically. And we are the Sisters of the Holy Cross, and we started in France. This is Father Basil Anthony Mary Moreau who started us. He started us after the French Revolution, and he was in the seminary working there and decided that they needed more priests, sisters, and brothers. And so he started the 3 congregations of Holy Cross. And they are located now in Notre Dame, Indiana, where the University of Notre Dame is. Usually when I give this, I always show the first football team, but I thought most of you are OSU people, so I did not show the old team. And this is Mother Angela, who was the first Mother General here in the United States, and I will talk about her a little later. She's from Lancaster, Ohio. And so those of you who have the history of Lancaster, she was there with several other of her relatives, and so she went to Notre Dame to become a Sister of the Holy Cross. Someday I'll tell you that history as well. This is, I think I'm behind here. So anyway, I'll talk about this. The Sisters of the Holy Cross, as they were teaching, had a lot of colleges, had a lot of grade schools, and a lot of high schools. And during the Civil War, as the Civil War began, the governor of Indiana came to the sisters and asked them if they would do nursing. Now, at this time, in 1860, there were no schools of nursing, colleges of nursing. There was very little training for nurses. And so what happened was the sisters just went and became nurses. And the governors of all the states in the northern states asked a congregation of sisters if they would release some of their sisters to become nurses. And that's what they did. And why I show you this boat, this is the Red Rover, and you will see pictures of that in the hospitals as well. And the Red Rover was a ship that the Northern Army confiscated from the Southern Army and turned it into a health hospital. And so the sisters were on this hospital and took care of both the Northern and the Southern soldiers. And this plied up and down the Ohio River and also up and down parts of the Mississippi. And so this was a very brutal kind of hospital because most of the people lost their limbs. So there was a lot of amputations on those boats. And what happened was, you know how you triage, that's a term you will learn when you come to the college. When you triage, you set aside those people who are very ill. And in those days, they set aside those people who thought they were going to die. And so you had people who they thought they could save, and then those people who thought they would die, and then they didn't take care of them. See, these are the Sisters of the Holy Cross in the front row. That's what we looked like a while back. We don't look like that anymore, as you can see from me standing here. And then you see some other congregations that are there. These sisters, oops, sorry. Anyways, but they took a picture with some of the soldiers, and most of the soldiers that were pictured with them worked on the ship or on the hospitals that they acquired. And this is what it looked like, one of the sisters taking the pulse of one of the patients. After the Civil War, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, Dr. Wine said that she was with the Navy at one time, and one of the things I told her when she came on board, that because the Sisters of the Holy Cross were on this ship, the government proclaimed that the Sisters of the Holy Cross were the first Navy nurses. And they have a huge statue in Washington, D.C. showing that and giving credit to the sisters for being the first Navy nurses. Now, when the war was over, we went back to teaching. We had 180 sisters in our congregation at the time when the Civil War broke out, and 90 of them volunteered to become nurses. So that was half of our congregation. So when the war was over, we went back to teaching. And what happened is we started to build hospitals after that time. Our first hospital was in Carroll, Illinois in 1867, and that was at the confluence of the Mississippi and the Ohio River. And Carroll, Illinois, even though it was in Illinois, was a very southern city. And so it had very southern ideas. Now, when we went back to teaching, this gentleman is Dr. Hawks. And Dr. Hawks was here in Columbus. And he belonged to the Medical Association, and he thought that they needed a hospital in this part of town. We were the first hospital, and he decided that it would be here on this spot, right here. And he bought the land, and he started raising funds to build a hospital. And he asked Dr. Hamilton if he would assist him in doing that. And before the hospital was finished, Dr. Hawks died. So Dr. Hamilton and his two sons continued building the hospital. And this is the hospital that they built. Now, if you know the history of hospitals, most doctors, what they did was either start hospitals in their own homes, setting aside a couple of rooms, or they bought a house and made it into a hospital. This was one of the first hospitals that was built to be a hospital. And this hospital was built on the site that we are sitting right now. And what it had was several private rooms, several wards, which meant there were several women in one ward, several men in another ward. It had a lot of features that you needed in a hospital. It had a surgery, and above that surgery was a room where the student physicians could watch the surgeries. That was something new. And so you had, so this was the first hospital here in Columbus. Now, that was in 1886, so we'll talk a lot about the hospital being built in 1886. By 1891, this sister does not do well. So from here to here was the hospital that they built from 1886 to 1891. That's huge. And this is the original right here. And all of that still remains today. It's all hidden because we've moved out and out and back, but it's still there. And someday all that's going to be torn down as well. This is what it looked like several years later. And this particular piece right here, see that? That was the chapel. And that was the chapel for the hospital. You are now sitting where that chapel was. In 1981, we tore that down so we could build this building for graduate medical education. And so everything else is still here. And you notice the building back here, right here? See what it says up there? That was the School of Nursing. And they built that in about 1913 because the School of Nursing started in 1903. And at that time, we had several hospitals by that time. And what happened was, you know how you do, well, you don't know yet, but you do your rotations, okay? And you do med surg on, you know, in this hospital, surgery in this hospital, whatever. And what they did, because all of our hospitals had schools of nursing, the students went to those cities. So you may do your med surg in South Bend, you may do your psychiatry in Boise, you may do OB in Fresno. So you got to go around the country. And so that was interesting. Nowadays you just stay in Columbus and do your rotations here. This was the chapel. This is where we work right now. This is the inside of the chapel. And this is the first graduating class. 1906. Aren't they lovely? Wouldn't you like to wear those uniforms today? And this was the front entrance. Now you see the new building that we have next door, and you see where the front entrance is to the building next door. This was the front entrance. And what they did when they tore that building down, because it was so old, and we couldn't rehab it because it was, you know, one of these schools where you had to have the supporting pillars every 15 feet. So you couldn't do anything. You couldn't make it like a wide auditorium like this. So they tore it down and they built that building. If you notice from the outside, it almost looks like this one. And that's what we did. We tried to make it look just like the one we tore down, only in a very new edition. As the sisters were working here, what happened in 1913, Franklinton was flooded. They had a huge flood here, and the majority of the city of Franklinton was overwhelmed with water, and the only place that was above water really was Mount Carmel. And as you saw in the picture before, and if I go back far enough, see how high it was here? So we were not flooded. We were kind of in a high spot. So what happened is all the people, or a lot of the people in Franklinton, came to the hospital. And we released most of the patients that we could release, and the people stayed there for about 2 weeks. And in those days, in your backyard, you had chickens, you had pigs, you had maybe 1 or 2 milking cows. Well, they brought those with them. So they were all on the front lawn. And so what we had to do was get food. There were bridges, like the Broad Street Bridge was out, the Main Street Bridge was out. So they had to roll all the food in from downtown. So that was quite an interesting situation. So you can see more of the flood. And what happened until about maybe 15 years ago, you could not build in Franklinton. The government would not let us build. And if you built here on this particular property, if you built it adjacent or connected to the hospital or these buildings here, it was fine. But if you notice across the street where we have 2 of our buildings and the garages are underneath, we could only build on stilts, and that was considered stilts. And so we could only build buildings like that. So it really caused us not to do a whole lot of building here at Mount Carmel until the flood wall came. You've all heard about the flood wall. If you haven't, at least your parents have. And so they put the flood wall in, and then we could start building again. Now, I just wanted to show you some of the equipment. This was a doctor's bag in those days. And those of you who are going to be studying in the library next door, Stevo, the chief librarian, has put in a wonderful display on the third floor, of all the equipment that nurses used in those days, the uniforms that they wore. So it would be good for you to take a look at that. You need to take your parents over there and show them, because it gives you a good history of what it was like in the days when it was early. And here's the microscope that they used. Here is a typical bedroom, or a typical room for the patient at that time. And if you looked at the outside that I showed you, there were a lot of chimneys. Well, in some of the rooms there were fireplaces. And today those fireplaces are in the walls. Our folks who do, the facility people know where they are. I have no idea where they are, but they are in the walls. This is the pharmacy. This is the kitchen. And when I came here 34 years ago, the kitchen was still here on this spot. Didn't look like that. But now it has moved to the new dining room, and PT is in this room. So we still have a lot of the old buildings. This is a solarium, and on the 7th, I believe it's the 7th floor, they have the solarium. And we took the patients out there for fresh air. But we also took the tuberculosis patients out there. Because in those days, the doctor said the TB patients needed sunshine and fresh air. So that's where we took them. And in 1926, because there were so many tuberculosis patients, we created a tuberculosis hospital in New Mexico. And the really serious patients we sent out there. The ones we thought we could cure, we kept here. The ones we didn't, we sent to New Mexico. This is a typical hall at that time. And you notice the chairs, the tables, the plants. Today, Joint Commission would kill us in the hallway. So it was very nice to have those, and the gas lamps. See the gas lamp? But in those days, we could get away with just about anything. But not today. So here again, and you see the statue on the left-hand side? If you run into some of the nurses who have been here for a long, long time, they call the floors by what the statue was. I worked on St. Joseph Hall, I worked on St. So-and-so Hall, I worked on this hall. And so when Joint Commission came, we had to get rid of all those. So now it's, 3 East, 7th Tower, etc. I mean, those are names that are just blasé names. They're not good names anymore. So here we go again, more of that. This is the operating room. Now, the operating room, if it got warm in the operating room, what happened? They opened the windows. Not very sanitary, was it? And so today, we have exchange of air. We have all kinds of things to make it very sanitary. But in those days, that was it. And don't you like the garbs that the nurses wore? Now, where your gymnasium is where this chicken yard was. And so in those days, the sisters raised their own chickens. And they had 2 farms out where Mount Carmel East is. You know where Mount Carmel East is? That was one of the farms. And then across the street where the cemetery is and where our corporate building is right now, that was the other farm. And so we had this, and we decided that we needed to build onto the college, and so we had to move the chickens out to the east side of town. But when you're in the gymnasium, remember, you're in the chicken yard. This is typical of what we would do on the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And the nurses would go out and they would sing the song, Our Lady of Mount Carmel. That was every year in their nurses' outfit, in their caps, which you probably will never see, and in their capes, which you probably will never wear. If your parents had gone to school here, if your mother went to school here, she may have a cap. And a lot of the nurses who had graduated before you wore their mother's cap to graduation. And so we would be in South Bend at the Mother House, and all across the country we would be singing Our Lady of Mount Carmel in honor of our feast day. Here is a pinning, which you will go through. And this is interesting. We looked at this and we thought, now what is this? And we thought we were brewing beer here. We thought we had our own Indian brewery. And actually, this was where we had one pharmacist here at Mount Carmel who was here forever, one of the sisters. And she was doing compounding. This was a compounding machine. Where you made sands and different things like that. And this was Sister Florentine. And I don't know if some of you older nurses remember Sister Florentine. Sister Florentine, when she got older, was very large. And the nurses would say, now, take this down to the sleep nurse. Take this down to the pharmacy. They were so scared of Sister Florentine that she had this crouching place and talk like, wow, what are you doing down here? And so they were all just shaking when the nurse told them to take something down to the pharmacy. And so this was Sister Florentine and her beer-making apparatus. Now, what I'm showing you here is the building that we created in around 1950. And that was the addition. And that was for more dormitory space and more classroom space. And then where you see the gym and that lovely looking picture on the cover, again, that was the chicken yard. And that was the new building. That was the old building. That was what the old building looked like. And when we tore that down because it wasn't of use anymore, we built it the same way. So it's a lovely piece of architecture for the campus. And then I'm just going to show you some of the buildings that you will be in. This is West, if you're not acquainted with West Hospital, out in front here. And this is the 2 farms that the sisters own. And if you see here, this is where we built Mount Carmel East. And at that time, there was no hospital on the east side of town. And we were selling all our property. As you can see, this over here, we sold to Western Electric, and this here, the parking lot, and Western Electric went all the way back to the railroad track. So we sold all of that to them. This was the graveyard, the cemetery, and we sold that to them. And over here, we sold part of that property to the freeway. So we sold that back to the government for the freeway. So those were our farms, and that's where we raised all of our food for the downtown hospital until the FDA came along and said, can't do that anymore. So that's why we started selling it. And so the only piece of property that we had left was this, right here. And we said we were going to sell it. My minions are telling me that I get
That's your evil minion.
Your evil minion.
Yeah.
So we decided to build East Hospital. And so this was 5 floors. We only opened 3 floors because we couldn't get the doctors from West to come out there. And so eventually we got a few to come out, and then they took over and ran this. And so then this is what it looks like today. And some of you will be working out there. And right now they are building a tower on the back end so that we have all private rooms. So if you go out there right now, there's a lot of construction going on. So they're going to rehab the whole hospital and put out a tower with private rooms. And this is when we bought St. Anne's. This was an infant asylum downtown on Brighton Road. And they took care of babies whose mother didn't want them. And so St. Vincent's, if you know St. Vincent's, that's still kind of an orphanage. We don't call them infant asylums anymore. We don't even call them orphanages. And so what happened was, this was the Sisters of St. Francis on Brighton Road. That was their hospital, on St. Anne's on Brighton Road. And so they sold it to us in 1995. And so now this is what it looks like. This is what the front entrance looks like. When we took over St. Anne's in Westerville, we quadrupled the size of it. So when you go out there, it's large. This is our orthopedic hospital up in New Albany. Great reputation, wonderful reputation, and they win awards all the time for how well they do. So that's, I don't know if you do orientation or I don't know. This is Dolly Ridge. This is a standalone emergency room and kind of a hospital. They have several rooms there for patients who need to stay overnight. And so this is the first standalone emergency room in the city. And this is halfway between Mount Carmel East and Lancaster. And we have 70% of it, and the Lancaster Hospital owns 30%. So they are doing very well as a standalone. And then this is Grove City. As you may know, we're moving some of the things from the West Campus to Grove City. So this is the standalone emergency room right now. And we have now begun to build a hospital. So all the beds from West will move out to Grove City. The college will remain here. Graduate medical education will probably move out to Grove City, and other things will remain here. We just haven't decided, but the emergency room and the college for sure. And so that's, I could go on for another hour, but my minions are yelling me to get on. So thank you.